here's again the district. The number 2 map is showing the same numbers in a little bigger scale. So then the 3rd map is essentially shows Concord again, a small portion of it going into District 5, but this one keeps the airport in the District 4. It also provides for the Panola would be whole. It provides for the San Ramon Valley in District 2 and essentially makes some other minor changes. So then map 3 essentially shows a little different split as far as providing a portion of the city of Concord, but it also provides more of the Walnut Creek in District 4. This one also has the airport in District 4. And again, here's the same map, but now with the demographic data. All of this is on our dedicated website. And so if you go to there, you can click on it and peruse this and draw your own maps if you would like. And then just to go down here on map number 5, essentially this one does much the same stuff. It makes Walnut Creek pretty much whole as far as District 4, but does not provide the Morgan territory into this district. So now I've lost there it is. Keep losing my pointer here. So, and this is the same map in a little bit of detail. So those are, again, the concept maps. Again, I would just caution you that these are only exactly that conceptual. The board has not considered any of these maps, but they will be as part of the board discussion at the October 19th meeting. So with that, I'm more than happy to answer questions, as is Christine, and I'm sure Supervisor Mitchoff as well.
One of the questions that's come up, David, and thank you for that. Thank you very much. And I want to commend you for that presentation on the sense that citizens need to get involved if they want to get involved. One of the big questions that comes up, however, is Karen had spoken earlier about the amount of money that we get by population for the census and how important that is, federal dollars and all that. The question is, what is the difference to each one of our supervisorial districts in terms of money? So why should a citizen in District 2 care or not care? Because money is going to come into the county. And so that's one of the questions we have.
Can I take that, David?
Yes.
The citizen in District 1 should care what's happening in in District 5 and vice versa. The county is responsible for public health, for libraries, for animal services. It's been my theme my entire supervisorial career, is how the county touches you. A lot of people don't recognize or realize how much the county touches each citizen. The sheriff, I'll give you an example. District 4 is the least unincorporated area. So that means the incorporated cities of Clayton, Concord, Pleasant Hill, and Walnut Creek all have their own police departments. But they all get services from the county sheriff relative to the jail. So it isn't an equal split per se, Matt, but my other thing always, and we've had the biggest example of our lives with the pandemic is public health. You want people healthy everywhere in this county. And if we have an outbreak, forget COVID, but TB came back in one area, as I recall, over the last 10 years. And so that may have been in one area of the county, but you want your tax dollars to go out there to make sure that it is, TB is not eradicated, but you want to make sure it's brought back under control, because we're a very mobile society and we travel all over the area. I'm sure you as the chamber have heard this from your businesses. what was happening in another county may have been more permissive than what was happening here in Contra Costa during the pandemic. We're not out of it. I don't mean to say that it's over by using the word during. And the concern was, in this instance, people could go get their hair cut in San Joaquin County while they couldn't get their hair cut here in Contra Costa. So, you know, that's a broad way of explaining it, but everybody should be concerned about every federal dollar. They travel on the highways, whether it's by car or they get public transportation dollars or BART or bus. So, and then David, if you wanted to add to that, but I just felt, you know, people need to, I wish the citizenry knew more than they do about how county services, and I'm not saying, oh, aren't we wonderful, the county, it's just how counties are set up in the state of California to provide services.
No, I think you've covered it very well, Supervisor.
Thank you. The next question, we're going to throw it to Karen too, is in Walnut Creek. This is a question that has come up from a number of people, and David has talked about the concept of geographic integrity, used the term Pinola's been made whole. People in Walnut Creek are saying, at one point I lived over by Larkey when my kids were little, and Karen was my supervisor. I live in the home that I grew up in, and Candace is my supervisor. The question coming from people is, would it make sense for Walnut Creek to have geographic integrity in the sense of having one supervisor, or is it better to have two voices speaking for the citizens of Walnut Creek? Kind of a political question, but Karen, I'd like you to.
No, that's fine. And when I came into office, Walnut Creek was actually represented by 3 supervisors. And you will note one map does make Walnut Creek whole. I prefer that term as opposed to integrity, because if it's split, it implies there isn't integrity. I think Walnut Creek has been well served by having 2 supervisors. I'm always amazed because sometimes nobody even knows who their supervisor is. And on issues, you know, I'll give development in any unincorporated area, Saranap, currently represented, and I think most of the maps keep Saranap in Candace's district, but there's been some development issues over there, and so the whole board gets involved in that, and I will meet with anyone, I know Candace will, who wishes to engage with me on any issue of that type. So I personally feel that whether a city is represented by 2 supervisors or not, they are still getting, you could call it 2 bangs for the buck, but this board is very collegial, and we just, and I know we're looking at the future, and I won't be on the board after next 2023, but we work well together and want to serve every district. We do keep certain district things within district if there's complaints. Hey, that's your district. But otherwise, I'm giving a long answer to your question, Matt, but there's nothing wrong with being represented by 2 supervisors.
No, and I appreciate that answer, and that's often what we talk about. But I saw it on the list of questions, and I thought, good, I've got just the person to answer it, Karen. A question has come up, and perhaps we could spend an hour or more just on the census alone, because we have lots of questions on the census. A question has come up about the difference between apportionment and redistricting. And that goes to California has lost, I think, maybe 1 person from the House of Representatives, and people are asking for a little understanding of apportionment. That means the idea of we have 435 House seats, and how are those apportioned among the states? And then redistricting. How does redistricting and apportionment impact the county of Contra Costa having lost population-wise that equals 1 House of Representatives seat?
Well, from what I'm understanding, that's going to happen down in Los Angeles, because that's where, and David, I'm sorry, I think I heard you wanting to jump in. It's not going to impact Contra Costa County unless the redistricting commission goes completely bonkers, and that's probably not an appropriate classification, but everything I've read says that wherever that will happen, it will be in the Southern California, Los Angeles area.
I think that's the perfect answer. Basically, on apportionment, this is the role of the California State Redistricting Commission. And so they will come up with a plan as to how to arrive at that. It's conceivable that whatever plan they come up with will end up in court because it has in the past. But really, unless they start moving the districts around in Contra Costa, California, or in the Bay Area, it really will not have any effect on the redistricting that we are doing.
I see. And I think Bob Brown had asked a question about that California Citizens Redistricting Commission, and people, I think, were a little confused. I see some of the questions that goes to congressional seats and the state legislature, but not our redistricting here in Contra Costa County.
That is correct.
Yeah. And as Bob asked, is there any crossover, any link, anything at all that impacts, I think you may have answered Bob's question, but that impacts based on what the California Citizens Redistricting Commission does and the impact on what we do here in Contra Costa County, even as to calendaring?
It really won't, again, I think that, could there be some movement on the lines of the legislative districts in Contra Costa County? That's possible, again, depending upon the population growth and what the statewide commission decides. But again, that is a map that ends up being overlaid on top of whatever districts Contra Costa County decides for the supervisors.
That's it.
Matt, can I acknowledge Dan Buckshee? I see his hand is up, and as your city manager, I'd like to.
You bet. I'm seeing just what's in the chat and on my list. So Dan, absolutely raise your hand, and I didn't. There, I see you now.
Yeah. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchoff, and good to see you again, David. It's been a while. Just out of curiosity and looking at the numbers, if I understood the data correctly, there's a 10% variance that's allowed by the regulations, plus or minus 5% in the districts. And applying the new population figures to the existing districts, it looks like we're within that 10%, being at about 7.5%. And then when I looked at some of the different scenarios that you shared, the variance in some is actually higher than the 7%. Some are around 8 or 9, I believe. So I'm just curious. So two-part question. One, is it accurate that technically speaking, you wouldn't have to need to change any districts in order to comply with the regulations? And secondly, if that's in fact true, which it may not, then what are the drivers for coming up with the multiple scenarios?
Dan, that's an excellent question that we get asked all the time. So number one, the current deviation at 7.91% is well within the allowance. And so therefore, if the board chooses not to make any changes, we would be fine in terms of compliance with both state and federal law. The reason that there's consideration of changing those numbers, some of which, as you correctly point out, are higher, is there's a desire on communities of interest. Remember, on the ranked priorities, that's the second highest one. So part of the goal of the board as they look at this and as we receive the public input is, what are those communities of interest and which districts are they better aligned with? So that impacts something. Again, I think the Morgan territory is kind of a classic example. It makes sense for that to be included with the city of Clayton because they have a very similar community of interest. There's also lots of school districts that for whatever reason, have a community of interest with an adjacent area. And so part of the goal has been to try to align those communities of interest better to meet both the ideas of the supervisors, but also what we're receiving from in terms of the public input, both at our hearings as well as community of interest maps that have been submitted.
That's helpful. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. While I have the floor here, I did just want to add what Supervisor Mitchoff mentioned in that I do think Walnut Creek's been very well served with having 2 supervisors. So I just thought I'd put that out there while I can.
And thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate that. And I know Gail's having a hard time with her camera. She texted me, so she's hearing that too, and we'll for sure convey that to Candace. Just so you, as my constituents, know, the map I'm most supportive of at this time is the 5th map. It does continue to have, I take more of Walnut Creek, but there's still a little bit of it that would be in Candace's district. And this does have the highest deviation. And I've mentioned that. David says, well, it's at 9.68. And I'm like, yep, we can go to 10. But if you look at that concept, you'll see the population. And so Candace has the highest over and federal has the most under. But it's just the way it worked out. And it keeps the airport in Concord. I have, as you can probably imagine, Concord has expressed, or some people in Concord have expressed they don't want to be split. Again, going back to my earlier comment that there's something bad and wrong with you as a city if you get split. But there's nobody living at Naval Weapons Station right now, but there will be in 10 years. And so I think I think a large chunk of Concord in the future will go into another district. However, I feel very strongly about keeping the airport, pardon me, in Concord. The first map, pardon me, does show it in Supervisor Glover's district. He would like that because it has a synergy, he believes, with the Northern Waterfront project. I don't think that synergy needs to be there. And I think Concord will swallow a little bit of a split that is shown in map 5 if they keep the airport. There's a strong identification. In fact, I think it's CCR. Maybe that always makes me think of Creedence Clearwater Revival, but I think that the call letters for that airport are CCR. They're not Buchanan Airfield. So that is another thing. The reason I support district, the 5th map is, David mentioned earlier, the Morgan Territory. More of that comes into my district, and it is a community of interest with Clayton. They had hoped to be in District 4 last time. And Supervisor Burgess has expressed a request to have part of the Northern Waterfront in her district. And so the 5th map does that. The 4th map I can live with, but it's a bigger, where it splits. My office currently would be in District 5. And there's nothing wrong with that because I'm going to suggest to my successor that they move more central in the district. The office has served us well, but we have found out during the pandemic, I'm the only office that has a communal staff room. And it has created, as you can imagine, concerns for the work environment. And I would express to my successor a new office somewhere more central in the district and with at least a few individual offices for staff, because we're going to be living with this for quite a while. So I wanted to put that out there. If you have questions of me now, you can also call me and email me, but as we continue the discussion.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, David. We're going to have to end our discussion here today. We reached the end of the time. I'm going to commend that. Don't be sorry. We're very happy with what you just told us. I think very important for people to know and understand that. I would ask everyone to go on site and look at those maps if they're interested. Certainly take up Supervisor Mitchoff and her invitation to talk with her about this, a very important process for our county. I want to thank everyone who participated today. Going back to Christine, thank you, and Karen, thank you, and David, and certainly Ron